Good morning, everyone, and I welcome you back to the House of Graphic Literature. And and my conscience will not let me rest until I make this video. For yours truly, over the past year, has read every single one of Hergé's Adventures of Tintin that have been translated into English. And it's got me to thinking there is no video that acts as like here are your perfect introductions to Tintin. Like, here are the best albums to read. Here's what could get you into the series as a whole. And I myself wanted to change that because over the course of, I want to say, 4 or 5 months, I have completely fallen in love with these stories. I understand why they're so important, and I completely get why they have endured for all these years. And so, with that said, today I want to present to you the top 5, technically top 6 albums that I think are perfect to introduce you to the world of Tintin. And the first two that I want to give you, which is why this is technically a top 6, even though they are two-parters, is Explorers on the Moon and Destination Moon. These albums right here, these were the second ever Tintins that I read, and these are just fantastic. And the wildest part about these is that they've endured in not only their content, but some of the science in this has like actually came to pass. Um, the rocket, for example, in this story, actually there is something very similar to it now. Um, I'm not sure if it's actually had a launch yet, but supposedly the science that makes the rocket work in this story is real. Like this has been done now, which is absurd. But this story really kind of gives you a whole idea of like what you're to expect with at least later Tintin stories. Because you have all the main players. You have Tintin, Haddock, Calculus, and the Thompson twins. You have and you all have them playing their proper role. Calculus is a bumbling but very competent scientist. The Thompsons are goofy dumbasses. Haddock is also a goofy dumbass, but in a different way. And Tintin's just along for the ride. um, and I love that this story just like it just moves at such a brisk pace. There are some Tintin albums that I've read where it feels like it takes forever to get to the end. This one I feel goes by pretty fast, probably because of all the gags. There is a lot of technobabble in this though that might be a little hard for you to capture at first. But there's an amazing sequence where Calculus, to use a modern term, crashes out, and and it's one of the funniest sequences I've ever read in a comic, literally ever. And just by flipping through these, you can see just how gorgeous like the art really is. Like Hergé and his studio really just went full force, especially just like with these rockets, because the thing with Tintin is that these were not first published as albums. These were published as one pagers, two pagers, sometimes 4 pagers in very different publications. At one point, it was a newspaper strip. Like it's always been a serialized story. So the fact that you were able to get like quality like this is just immaculate. And then Explorers on the Moon, which in my opinion is really good, but I think Destination is like really solid setup, and Explorers meanders a little bit, but it definitely has the best art of the two. Um, oh yeah, this is a bit that you won't totally understand unless you've read the last story, which is not on this list. Though I do love Land of Black Gold. Um, but just look at this. Look at this stuff, man. It's absolutely gorgeous. And you have these iconic orange spacesuits, which I'm a big fan of. They're collecting like minerals, and there's a rover and all this. And then here's the coolest fucking part of this one. The whole gang gets held at gunpoint in space, which is horrifying. Just horrifying thought. And then there's this hilarious panel of Tintin holding a gun with a smile on his face. Um, it's just so good, and it's a wonderful just like introduction as to how Tintin stories are and what makes them so great. So that's Destination Moon and Explorers on the Moon. The one that followed immediately after that, takes my number, which takes my number 4 spot, is the Calculus Affair. This story is fucking awesome. It's like a kind of wartime espionage sort of thing, where Calculus creates this machine that is capable of like dissolving metal, and basically they don't say that they're the Nazis, but they're basically the Nazis are trying to steal it from him, and so there's this huge, massive, crazy chase that is like globe trotting. We get introduced to this really funny fucker right here who becomes a staple from this point forward. Like it is just so much fun, dude. This story is great. And I couldn't believe how good it was, because whenever I hear people talk about like the best Tintin stories, the Calculus Affair never comes up, but it really should, because this one is just so much fun, dude. So many good bits in this one, and the cartooning is just phenomenal as always. So yeah, the Calculus Affair. I absolutely recommend this one. This one's near and dear to my heart. This was the first Tintin story that I actually sat down and read in full for the very first time. And I walked into my favorite record store. I saw this album sitting on the shelf, and I was like, I've always been meaning to read Tintin, and so I sat my ass down and I read the entire album in that area in the record store, and I was completely unbothered the entire time because I was completely immersed in the world that Hergé was introducing to me, and it was just monumental. And this is the only Tintin hardcover that I own. That's not true. I have Tintin in the Congo, which is only available in hardcover. That one is not on this list for obvious reasons. But I just want to mention just how beautiful the end papers on these hardcover albums are. It makes me wish I owned every single one of these albums in hardcover, though I do like the convenience of the softcover albums. Just this alone, though, like really makes them worth it. But the Blue Lotus is a very early Tintin story. In fact, it was the fifth. Yes, it was the fifth Tintin story. And for those not in the know, Tintin was actually redrawn very late on. There's a there's a Tintin's publishing history is a whole mess of things, but just something that you need to know is that originally the first nine Tintin albums were in black and white and were serialized in there was Le Petit Vingtième and Le Soir, and then eventually Tintin magazine. And this was one of the ones that was published in Le Petit Vingtième. And early Tintin stories have not aged well. They're kind of mean. They have a lot of the really rough cartooning of that era, and that's why I really don't recommend any of them. Like for first time readers, just go back and read those later. But Blue Lotus, I think, is the outlier here because the Blue Lotus is so interesting to me. And I don't have the black and white version to compare with it. But this color version is gorgeous. And to put it bluntly, this is the Sino-Japanese conflict done through the eyes of China, which is very bold to do at this time. But Hergé actually became friends with a Chinese scholar who basically told him about all these customs, how Chinese stereotypes just don't make any sense, and more importantly, just the kind of things that his people were facing, and so Hergé kind of used that to his advantage, and made a follow up to Cigars of the Pharaoh, which took place in China and actually treated the Chinese like human beings. This is actually one of my favorite sequences right here. It's Tintin and his new buddy Chang discussing just like how stuff like the Fu Manchu and all that are just bullshit. They just don't make any lick of sense, and they do a great deal in dehumanizing the people, and it's very smart, very harrowing stuff. And while the cartooning still kind of falls into those like tropes, per se, specifically with with the Japanese villain, I do think that it's done in a way that makes sense for a story like this, and doesn't feel like it's like talking down to you with this sort of conflict. And it was just really it was very eye opening. Like I after reading this, I realized that I deprived myself of such an amazing array of stories that you just aren't gonna get in American comics. And so, as a follow up to that, I want to recommend Tintin in Tibet. Tintin in Tibet is actually basically a direct follow up to The Blue Lotus, even though it was made way later. The Blue Lotus was released in the 30s, the color version was done in the 40s. This was released in the late 40s, early 50s, if I recall. But this one is fantastic. This was also, this was my third, or fourth. This is my fourth Tintin album I ever read. And it's basically just Tintin gets a vision that Chang is not okay, and so takes it upon himself to travel the world to go find Chang. And it's great. There's so many good sequences in this. It's funny. It's heartfelt. It's beautiful because we spend a lot of our time in Tibet, which means you get to see Hergé draw mountains and snow and all kinds of just very pleasing to the eye things. The only thing that kind of falls apart in this is there's a Yeti, and the Yeti kind of looks ridiculous. um, but I'll forgive it for that because I just yeah it's a little silly, but I forgive it for that because this story is just too fucking good that like I really can't recommend it enough. Like this is probably the most the most emotional Tintin album, I think. Like the one that seeks to tug at your heartstrings while still making you laugh. I would be an idiot not to mention this one because this was the basis for the unfortunately semi-successful, phenomenal Steven Spielberg Tintin movie. Um, Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson um, became Tintin fans kind of later on in life because a lot of people point to like Indiana Jones, including myself, to be very Tintin inspired, but actually they were more inspired by the Depp comics by Carl Barks. But after after Steven Spielberg discovered Tintin, he was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I need to make this a movie." And Peter Jackson is a lifelong Tintin fan because he's a Brit, and the British fucking love Tintin because they got Tintin first. Um, they got Tintin in I believe the early 50s, and so the Secret of the Unicorn is the basis for the main story covered in the movie. However, it is not one to one with this album, as you can see. Um, but this one is just so much fun. This was honestly, whenever I got to this album in my Tintin read through, because I was reading them basically in order after I read the random ones. This was the one that like where it really fucking clicked. That I was like, oh my God, Tintin is one of the best comic series of all time because Secret of the Unicorn is so good, and it's mainly due to this sequence right here, where Haddock is recounting the swashbuckling adventures of his ancestor, and it's so much fun and it's super silly, but it's also like very epic and cool. This sequence right here is actually referenced by Charles Burns in a talk that he did once, and I was really excited whenever I got to that part because I was like, yeah, wow, because he recounts it as being like really creepy as a kid because it's like there's just a hole in a wall and it's like there's a mouth on that wall talking. He didn't know what like a he didn't know what an intercom was or whatever, so it just kind of comes off as really creepy and unsettling, and that was part of that was part of the imagery that made his book Last Look work, which also, as I mentioned in my last video, has a very Tintin art style whenever you go into the dream world. But yeah, this one is just phenomenal. And I would include Red Rackham's Treasure, which has some absolutely gorgeous imagery, but I already cheated with the Moon dyad, and I kind of recommend the Moon dyad over Secret of the Unicorn in terms of like the two-parters. I really wanted to put Crystal Balls and Prisoners of the Sun on here too because I really like those as well. But I feel like the Moon dyad is the one that like I can wholeheartedly like recommend, and you'd probably get the most out of it. And Red Rackham's Treasure is good, but I think Secret of the Unicorn is much better setup. And Red Rackham's Treasure is a bit of a okay continuation. And the last one that I want to recommend, which may come as a surprise to many people, because this one isn't really that talked about. Um, for one, it's an early adventure that doesn't include Haddock. And yes, I'm not including Crab with the Golden Claws. I love Crab with the Golden Claws as much as most Tintin fans, but I think it fails in some aspects in its storytelling. And I will say the first time I read through it, I wasn't terribly impressed. I have since gone back and reread it, and I think it's great, but I don't want to recommend it as a first, um, because it does feel there's a bit of cognitive dissonance between it and later Tintin albums, because Haddock gets introduced and he's really not the same kind of character that he is in those later albums. The pacing is also really weird in that one, and there's just some stuff that doesn't work like it should in that one, which is why it's not on this list. I still think Cry with the Golden Claws is great, but I think this one really might be my favorite. I don't know. Like I fight between Black Island, Blue Lotus, and Secret of the Unicorn as to what my favorite Tintin album actually is. But Black Island is really fucking cool, man. It's all about Tintin going to England, and the funny story about this one. So this one actually did get colored pretty early on. However, Methuen, who put out the albums in the UK, actually contacted Hergé directly and was like, "Hey, we really like the color on this album. However, this is not true to anything in the UK. You kind of base this off of like really old images, and we want you to redraw it and make it look more like what England actually looks like." And Hergé and his studio rose to the occasion, and they did that, and they made one of the most pleasing to the eye albums, in my opinion. This thing is really good visually, and it's super action packed too. There's not a lot of Tintin albums that I can cite as being like almost all action, but this is one of them. There's so many good action sequences in this. Um, there's also some really funny action sequences in this, but like there's just so many like really sound, very well cartooned moments in this that make me love it as much as I do. Um, there's also just like there's that globetrotting aspect which I always love. Tintin goes to Scotland, which is really cool. And then my favorite aspect of this is Tintin fighting a fucking gorilla, which is just absurd. It's such an absurd thought. Why the fuck would Tintin be fighting a gorilla? But it's great. It's so good. And this character right here, he comes back later in another album that I really wanted to put on this list, but I still think that it's just not great for beginners. But Shooting Star is great. So just if if there was like a number 7, it would probably be the Shooting Star, because I really like that album as well. But yeah, man, like, oh my god, and the airplay in this one is fucking awesome too. I love the Black Island so much. This is such a fucking cool story. And I love this motif. This is a motif that Hergé kind of gave up later on, which is the newspaper, which is funny because this is 21 of Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work. And Wally was right. This panel always works. It's always cool whenever it happens. I don't know why Hergé stopped doing it. But yeah, folks. I did the Herculean task. I read every single Tintin album. And by the end of it, these are the ones that I highly recommend you, as a Tintin novice, to read for yourself. And if I was wrong and you end up hating all of these, I'm sorry. But from the outside looking in, to me, to someone who is now practically a Tintin expert, um, these are the best albums to read, in my opinion. The ones that will give you a perfect idea as to why Tintin is so great, as to why it has endured all these years, and as to why I just this fucking series has just invaded my brain for the past 5 months. Like, just Tintin is always there in the back of my mind, and it's just because it really is that good. And I want to share the love. I think everyone should read this series. Read at least one of these that I've recommended to you, and just have a ball. Because I mean, they're not that long. They're super easy to read because they were translated in a way that would be understandable for kids, and they're just beautiful. They're beautiful to look at. Um, and I just couldn't give any higher praise than I already have. Thank you, George Remy, for making just such a fantastic series of adventure stories. And I hope that you walk away from this video, give these a try, and I hope you also become a fan because I think Tintin can't have enough fans. And with all that said, that is the end of this video. We're going much longer than I expected us to. I figured this would be shorter like the last video, but I just I just love talking about Tintin, and I can't stop. So, before I go any further, thank you for watching, of course. Comment what is if you have read a lot of Tintin albums, or if you've read even just one Tintin album, tell me what your favorite is. I'd love to know. And so, with all that said, we're done. We can move on. I can move on. Thank you and goodbye.